point, we'll be going into the Q&A. I'm pleased to bring on stage David again, and also I'll bring on stage Professor Sonal. And with that, Sonal, if you can put on your camera, that would be great. We will just kind of have a quick discussion, also looking at the question that people are putting in the chat to respond to them. So once again, just a reminder, we are on the Financing a Sustainable Food System webinar, and I'm so pleased that you have stayed on with us at this point. It's been very interesting conversations, and also the presentations from the global agri-food techpreneurs and presentations from our speakers on their journey within sustainable finances, as well as also the food system. So just to come to you, David, what was your take with regards to the COP28 going on at the moment, and the discussion about, a lot of issues is spoken around, climate finance, and then, having the finance for the agri-food sector as a sector of it. What is your thought on that, and how do you see that evolving for the future to ensure that most of those funding could be allocated to agri-food projects?
Thank you. Briefly orienting to the discussion, there are a few areas to look at that are connected, they're synergistic. So one area is how we relate to the regeneration of the soil as part of the financial model. The other is how we relate to whether the funding coming in to do the projects is supportive or extractive on a spectrum, right? Because everything is unique, and we need to develop models of funding these projects that are more supportive and less extractive. And that goes back to some of the other principles that I brought forth very briefly of changing the relationship model between the funding and the recipients of the funding so that it's more supportive, more mutually committed. One of the problems that I see, and Bing, your presentation was fantastic, because I see so much of the time in my work with banking and with financing projects that the source of financing is still not completely committed to the mutual success. In other words, the old financial models are designed upon a scarcity model where there's envisioned a scarcity of money and an abundance of projects. One of the stats that you put up there was, I don't forget how many thousands of projects were looked at and 13 were funded. And my question is, what happens to all the other ones? Are they all worthless? Or some of them are probably worth funding. So we need to actually deconstruct a lot of the financial models that we're used to using over the last 100 years and ask ourselves, how can they have less intermediarization, right, between the recipient and the provider of the funds, so we actually find legal and appropriate and safe and helpful ways to bring the parties together. Because when they have relationship, it actually creates a toroidal effect that supports the success of both parties through the relationship. And the simple explanation of what that really means is when a recipient or an entrepreneur knows the supplier of the funds personally, when they hit those incredible challenges in their project, they're much less likely to quit than if the investor is a number or a name on a piece of paper they don't know. And we start to engage the deep roots of community, and we create community in our funding relationships. So then those entrepreneurs are forced, I'll include myself as one of those, we are forced to dig deeper and become more creative and bring in more help and stretch further to actually succeed, because we will commit to not failing, not just ourselves or our dream or the mission, but our friends, like family. So I would say that's the most important thing to bring into this discussion is how can we take those principles and go into all these structures that we have and find and ask the people in those areas that almost all of them mean well, right? They all mean well. They're just hampered by those old structures. How can we bring more relationship, more mutuality, those principles that I outlined, abundance, mutuality, collaboration, creativity, efficiency, and generosity? They are a circle and they keep going. So that's maybe an opening look at that question. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really important. Bringing out all the factors and seeing how they intersect and how we can make the best use of them, and not just the connection between these impact, but also how we can bring bring the present, showing different potential sources of funding, and how do we leverage these different routes of funding to make sure that we can deliver a sustainable food system. So I think that brings me again to you, being regards to sustainable index. You mentioned sustainable index and also ambition. How do you see this playing out for financiers, for the funders, whether they are commercial banks or multilateral development banks or different philanthropies? How do you see that playing out for them? How do they connect with these factors, especially when it comes to sustainability linked factors? You're muted, Bing.
Sorry. Yeah, thank you very much for this excellent question, and thanks so much for the presentation from David and Sonal, and then also the answers from David as well. Really enjoying that. So I've been working around this field for many years now. That there's quite a lot of time that I feel quite disappointed. And then, there are times that I feel that there's some hope, but there's time that we see the finance as usual, as exactly David said, that they want everything, right? They want performances, they want they want financial returns, they want sustainability. So sometimes it's really, really hard. And we've like for most commercial banks, for example, they're commercially driven, and they I think it's very hard for businesses, and especially for SMEs actually. And you can see that there are some alternative and channels, and as I showed in one of the slides, that people may relying on the green finance sustainability linked bond loans, or there is like a debt, kind of like low interest rate and like lendings, loans, and or impact investment, or even crowdfunding. So in one of the projects we worked with, and they relied on crowdfunding because they couldn't get the money from the traditional, financial institutions. They turn to people, because people, they are, more passionate and about doing the right thing. So I think, and there are and there are definitely that, and there's lots of hope, but I think and the financial system need to change, that they need to value the sustainability heavier on their decision making model, so that rather than, because at the moment there may be, I don't know, that they're the model behind, let's say that they are weighing the financial returns and maybe a bit too heavy, but they need to really considering the long-term sustainability a bit more.
Great point, being I can see David is itching to say something. It's just okay. I'll just say for everyone listening to us, we running behind schedule, and we will kindly seek for extra 10 minutes to be able to wrap up. So please do stay on with us. Thank you. Go on, David, please.
Oh, well, thank you, Bing. That was perfect. And Buckminster Fuller years ago said, rather than trying to recalibrate some of the existing model, we can build new models that replace the old. And there are examples of that. And partnership is a concept. The philosophy of partnership generally basically says none of us wins unless we all win, right? And that's the opposite of most of the financial model, even with mostly well-intended people, because the old financial model says money has to be safe, money has to win, even if the project fails. And that's the beginning of the separation and the wall that's between them that actually causes a lot of the problems that we're trying to prevent in that relationship, right? So bringing back partnership, relationship. There's an example of this that happened years ago, and it disappeared because it was actually destroyed by events, but we all know this, and that was the Grameen Bank. And the Grameen Bank is a very exciting example to go back and look at, because what Mohammed Yunus created was, on the outside, it seemed like a very extractive model, but it wasn't. His microloans to many people in Southeast Asia were very high interest, 26% interest. But he used that money to hire local people to go out to the villages where the borrowers were and create social accountability circles with the borrowers in that village, taught them how to do that so they would hold each other accountable and support each other's success. And he had a 99% repayment rate, 99 point something. It was astounding. And it was successful because he recycled that capital back into support. The
Exactly.
partnership model. None of us succeed unless we all succeed. What happened after that, of course, is Wall Street and some investment banks in Europe saw that number, 26%. And all of a sudden you had an explosion of microfinance, but they weren't using the money to do what Grameen Bank was doing. And so it all fell apart very quickly because it didn't work that way. So then that's a point. The other piece is the beauty of connecting new finance with soil, living soil, because they're very similar. Because living soil is a gigantic cooperative where all of it ties together. You know, in a handful of soil, there's more people, more microbes than people on Earth. And it's all working synergistically. It also is the most powerful sequester of carbon. So when we talk about finance, climate change, carbon sequestration, living soil is the best tool that we have, and it also will feed us. So it's, again, many things come together when we I guess, study and emulate nature.
Yeah, I think soy is the other, I wouldn't say the new gold, is the other gold. We need to really harness it and make it work, and also restore it to its own goodness. With that, I'll just go to Sonal. I mean, you've led this STFC Food Network with funding from the Science Technology Facility Council, and that was focused on developing cutting edge re- technologies and also engaging in cutting edge research to address food system challenges. What was your take from that funding, and how do you see the government helping to continue to benefit from very developed technologies in different sectors and applying it in a way that really helps to solve sustainability issues?
Yeah, thanks, Ife, and thanks, David and Bing, for the insightful thoughts on financing sustainable agriculture. Just on that note, I think technology is as good as it is being used by the users. Yeah, so it's all depend on who is using it and how beneficial it is for them. So, for example, my take for while leading STFC Food Network is like one size fits all doesn't work because there are different sizes of the farms, different culture, across the different places in the globe. So the things that we are proposing here in the UK might not work in other countries in Asia or Africa, simply because the culture and the farm sizes are not similar in terms of the technology adaptation or adoption of it. But having said that, I completely agree with what has been discussed here so far in terms of the health of the soil. I think the health of the soil should be put on the primary sort of agenda of the government, looking into the planetary health as well as linking it to human health, how that impacts. One of the other things which has been very less talked about, but I think there are emerging dialogues being going on with the government and other startups as well, looking into agroecology and how those could be financed well for farmers, how farmers could be actually rewarded and incentivized for the best practices We still haven't got the right model, I guess. Otherwise, it would have been practiced all across the world. But it is catching up. It is catching up, and we are here also discussing with some of the foundation companies, like companies who are having foundations to look into investing into agroecological practices for buying out their carbon. However, we just need to be a little cautious about ethical carbon trading. We shouldn't be falling into the trap of, like, agroecology funding, let's say, fossil fuel company to buy out their carbon credit. so quite a few sort of areas where government interventions are needed, different sort of policies are needed, and different kind of collaborative models are needed between government and private, or, like, PPP models for encouraging a sustainable finance for sustainable agriculture.
Well, thank you so much, Sonia. Fantastic contribution. I've got a question from the audience. I think she's asking, how do we build capacity for like for SME? How can an SME build capacity in soil improvement and sustainability? And I person directed the question to Bing, but I think David would be most appropriate to answer that question.
Okay, thank you. I want to encourage everybody on this in this meeting to go watch a documentary called "The Need to Grow." The Need to Grow, and you can view it on, I think, on Netflix, on Amazon Prime. You can also view it at grow.foodrevolution.org. Grow.foodrevolution.org. The man featured in that film, his name is Michael Smith. In the movie, it's about 6 years old. It's about his project, his technology. It's called the Green Powerhouse. We are building the first new version of that technology right now here in the US. We're almost finished with it. We now call it an Earth Power Lodge. And one of my companies has been formed to assist Michael Smith in bringing that technology to the world. We have many countries already wanting it. The basics of it, it takes green waste of every kind, creates biochar and energy, of course, hypergrows nutrient-rich algae that grows 800% per day in weight, combines them, the two, with 4 different kinds of biorefineries that ferment and blend and potentialize the nutrient value of that liquid. We call the liquid Regenegrow. We spray it on the soil, and it grows the microbiome 400 times faster than basic composting. Proven for many years, it works. He's a genius. These are closed loop systems that can adapt to any bioregion and can be customized. And we have companies ready to bring that anywhere in the world right now. So that's one way to deal with the soil. The other part that's important is to create globally distributable, sustainable, and efficient ways to get that food where it needs to go. And we have found one of those ways. There are others on this call also, but a lot of us have technologies to make that food transportable, storable, efficient, available at a high nutrient level, right? So when you combine growing more soil very quickly anywhere in a desert, in the climates that you don't think you can grow food, you can. And then the ability to put that food in forms that we can get to where it needs to go. We have 42% more food is wasted right now. That's enough food to feed everybody. We just have to connect the dots. And then the last piece is soil and food and money are the same. They're all tools that we have to use, to be able to connect people and connect these resources so we can have a better world. And if we look at money and finance the same way we're looking at soil and food, we'll find ways to solve it. And there are examples of that now. We can keep multiplying those examples.
Thank you so much, David. I think one thing I'm not sure that did come across to everyone who is listening to us today is the unique model you've developed with Unifield with regards to being able to commit farmers to adopting sustainable practices by committing to pay them for a certain amount of their produce. So that means that if they are producing this quantity, you are committing that you're going to buy that off them and create a market for it. I think that's fantastic, and that means that it could help more farmers to be, committed to adopting sustainable practices. So I think that's a very unique financing model that should be deployed almost everywhere in the world to, boost organic food production. I think at this point we will need to wrap it up because anyone that stayed with us till this time have really tried to stay some extra few minutes. But I'm sure that if we continue the conversation, we will stay here a far longer because a lot is coming up and people are asking questions, and it is just great to hear these insights and also to be able to be together and be able to share knowledge together. So I really do appreciate your contributions, being David and Suna. I don't know if you have a last comment or statement for our
Yeah,
viewers.
sure. Can I just add a few lines regarding capabilities for SMEs? So I think with our experience with STFC Food Network and funding around 100 plus projects, we understood that maybe we could come up with some sort of SOPs. There are still very lack of standard operating protocols for many different things, be it the sustainable agriculture practices of the different products, different farm size. How do you do it? Be it the platform development for connecting farmers to the market, there are certain data types that is needed, the minimum amount of the data types that is needed. Still, there is no sort of standard practices. So I think some of the things are good without standards, but for some we would need some sort of definitions of standards. And I think maybe our collaborations and the research institutions, we can come up with some sort of trainings and capability building exercises for SMEs as well as farmers.
Yeah, great point, Sona. So thank you so much for joining us. Definitely, those standard operating practices we need to be developed, and we need to continue to collaborate and work together. I think that's a key theme that's coming out from all the conversation, and I really do appreciate all your contributions. And let's stay in touch. Let's keep working together because we need to make sure that more people have access to good food, and we need to finance that to make it work. Thanks, David, and thanks, Sona, for joining us. Have a lovely
Thank
day.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Yeah. Bye.